we really had a nice reunion. And I had my oldest son cooked me the nicest tender steak you ever seen. and he had it cut about 1.5 inches thick, and I don't know how he got it just perfect, but he went outside and cooked it on a fire, and it was good. And, you know, I'm sort of a little bit toothless, but I was able to just sort of chew on that and enjoy it, and I really did enjoy it. Some good Bundy meat, it was good. You know, that's really something that I'd like everybody in the world to enjoy, is some good food. And that's what I do, is I harvest southwest desert, Nevada, the brush and the bushes and the grass. And I harvest that with my cattle, and my cattle convert that feed into an edible commodity, something that's good to eat, good for human beings. And that's where we get our steak and our hamburgers, and that's what we have for dinner. And that's good food. Everybody in the world ought to be able to have a plate of good food every day, let's put it that way. And you know, that's really how I feel about what I fight for. I fight for the freedom for a man to be able to produce and to thrive and to be happy. And I think that's the only way that can be done is through freedom. One of the main things that we have in this country that a lot of countries don't have is we have the United States Constitution. It's a blueprint for this type of life that I just talked about here. It's a blueprint where we the people are the government. We the people have a republic opportunity to participate in our government. We got rid of central government. We did that, and we fought the battle, and we won that battle in the Revolutionary War. We don't have to fight that battle again. That battle's already been fought. The blood and the tears and the terrible things that happened they paid that price. And those people give us the United States Constitution, 3 branches of government. And the United States did not win this war. Neither did the colonies win this war. We, the people, fought the British government and won this war. We won our liberty and our freedoms. And one thing we didn't want to do in America is to ever have a central government that ruled over us and took our freedoms away. And we don't want that today either. This battle has been fought. This battle has been fought, and we don't have to fight it again. We need to stand up and protect it. We will always have to protect our Constitution. We'll always have to fight for freedom and liberty. That's just part of humans. One of the mandates is on humans. If you want to be free, if you want to be have happiness, you're going to have to struggle for it. And we have to carry this on.
Claim, use, and defend.
That's right. And this government that we have, this pharma government that's formed under the Constitution, gives our federal government, our central government, very little power. And they have power, and they need to be able to exercise. And you know, one of those powers is they need to defend this nation from foreign governments. And they need to deliver the mail to us. They need to do things like weight and measurements. You know, we want a pound to be a pound in Nevada the same as it is in New York. Good things the federal government can do. But don't you ever let them come and act like they own the land within the state of Nevada or Arizona or Mexico or wherever.
You're here.
Amen. Amen.
We're not ever going to allow that to happen, not in America. The United States government absolutely cannot own land. Did you know that there's nothing in the Constitution that allows the United States government to own land?
Yes. Correct.
That's right.
The only time we give any leeway to that rule would be into Article 1, 8, and 17, where they can come with approval of the legislature of the state and the approval of Congress, and they can pay the state for land for a purpose. Most of those purposes are military purposes. The only other purpose is for other needful buildings. And those things would be something like a post office or a courthouse. That's the only land they can own. In Article 4, they talk about the government can have unlimited power or make rules and regulations over other property. What other property are they talking about? Where in the Constitution is anything talking about any other property? The only other property is that property they bought from the state. Sure, they can have, over in the Nellis Air Force Base, does any one of you American people have anything to say about what happens on that Air Force Base? Especially any of you Nevadans, any of you Clark County. Do you have anything you can say on that about that base? You can't tell them where to put a stop line. You can't tell them where to paint the ball. You have no jurisdiction authority there. Who has that authority? Congress has that authority to make all needful rules and regulations over their property. But over here on the desert, what authority do they have?
Zero.
They have no authority, no jurisdiction or authority. So, let's bring it down to a point here. What does Cliven Bundy say his defense is? I graze my cattle only on Clark County, Nevada land. And I have no contract with the federal government. The federal government doesn't own this land, so let's talk about the court. What jurisdiction does this court that we just got through dealing with? What jurisdiction does this court have over this issue?
Zero.
Okay, why? Because they don't own the land, and Cliven Bundy don't have a contract with them. I'm not a party. You know what not a party is? Read in Article Constitution 3 and 2, and you'll find out about parties. Well, I don't qualify. I'm not a party with the United States government. I don't have a contract. That's one of the biggest problems we have in this country, is we sign contracts with the federal government. That's what's wrong with all these ranchers around the country. When they go and get a grazing permit, what are they buying? Well, I'm not sure what they're buying, but I'll tell you one thing. They sign a contract and says the federal government has unlimited power over their ranch. And then they want to cry that they don't like the rules and regulations.
They're buying their own shackles.
They're buying their own shackles. They're taking away their liberty. They've lost their right to manage their own ranch. And they sign the bottom of the paper, the document, the contract. And not more than that, you know what they do? They pay the government for that service. They sign and they pay, and I don't know if there's a lawyer in here, but I'll get you, they'll say that's a good contract. If you sign and you pay, that's a good contract. That's what these ranchers are doing. That's what our county's doing, like Clark County, Nevada, when they have a tortoise habitat conservation plan. The Endangered Species Act of the United States don't give the federal government any power to deal within this Clark County, Nevada. The critter, the tortoise, don't qualify under the Endangered Species Act. It isn't commerce coming from New Mexico or Mexico. It's not interstate coming from New Mexico or wherever. It's not coming from a foreign land. If you had a tortoise that was in a pet shop in Las Vegas, and say he was imported from Mexico, well, that tortoise would qualify to come under the Endangered Species Act of the federal government. If that tortoise was transferred and bought and sold, but what about one of these tortoises out here on the desert? How does it qualify to the Endangered Species Act?
It's habitat.
It don't qualify because. So how come they got so much power? How come they're charging them?
Because we let them.
Yeah, millions of dollars of mitigation fee for say a pipeline or a power line or a road or a building permit to build a car. Mitigation fee. How come they're charging mitigation fee? Because we pay them. But the reason why it is Clark County signs a contract with the federal government, just like the ranchers signed a contract with the federal government. What's wrong with this? What's wrong with the ranchers? What's wrong with our county commissioners? What's wrong with the state of Nevada? And then you want to know who Bundy's mad at? Is Bundy mad at the federal government?
No.
No, I'm not mad at the federal government. Who am I mad at?
Met at the
State, county,
Yeah,
County
those
sheriff.
that have jurisdiction and authority is who I'm mad at, not the ones that don't have jurisdiction and authority. I'm mad at the ones that do have jurisdiction and authority. And they're the people of the Clark County, Nevada. Who does, the media says Bundy was going to stand over the federal government. Was Bundy standing over the federal government? Bundy was protesting the county sheriff. County sheriff, protect my life, liberty, and property is what Bundy was saying. That's what everybody was coming to do, is to get the government, or get the sheriff to do his job. And of course the sheriff, he went and hid under the table.
Did you see him under there?
Anyway.
We heard him out under there quivering.
If you go back, and I don't know how many of you is at the 2014 protest, and we was up on the stage, and we was on the under the flags of the United States. Let me talk about the flags that was up under at the 2014 protest. We had two flagpoles. One flagpole had "We," and the other flagpole had "We the People" on it. That was on top of the flagpole. Underneath the flagpole, the first flag that flew on the pole, on one side, we did do both sides, on one flagpole. The second flag, the flag underneath "We the People," what was that flag? Does anybody know what that flag was?
Wasn't it the Nevada flag?
Don't
Nope,
tread
it
on
wasn't
me.
the Nevada flag. What was it?
There's mine again.
Nope.
Gadsden?
Yeah.
Don't tread on me.
No, it was the Clark County, Nevada flag.
There's a county.
Oh, that's the opposite side.
Okay, so why is Clark County, Nevada sign their flag flying under "We the People"?
Because we are the,
That's where you're at.
They're the closest government to "We the People." They're the ones we really should be pledged to in one sense. We shouldn't be pledging to a government that has very little power. We should pledge to the government that's closest to us. Isn't that the government that we elect? And isn't that the government that we elect, nominate and elect the county sheriff? Isn't that the government that we pay the county sheriff to protect our life, liberty, and property? Isn't that why we're here under the flag protesting the sheriff to do his job? Because he represents, that first flag represents him. Represents our closest government. And we elected him and we pay him to do a duty. Now what's the next flag underneath that flag? Who knows?
state flag.
Okay, it's the state of Nevada flag. We the people, the county, and the state of Nevada flag. We should be pledging allegiance to the Nevada flag. Why?
Both of our states.
Yeah, it represents our sovereign state. Represents, we're sovereign here, and the state has certain jobs or duties to do. Let's just say, like, what about a state highway coming down through here? Don't you think it ought to have all the same 65-mile-an-hour speed limit? It should change every time you get to a new county. That's why we have a state government. Now, what's the flag underneath that flag? United States government. Why is it down on the bottom of the flagpole? Isn't it always tradition? Isn't it what we believe that it's supposed to be on top of the flagpole? And here Bundy has the United States flag flying on the down half-mast on the flagpole. What the heck are you trying to tell people? What is he trying to tell people?
Direct relationship between the states and the federal government.
Yeah, we're saying that the federal government has, we all pledge allegiance to this flag. We think it's beautiful. We know what it stands for. We don't want to degrade it at all. But why is it on the bottom of the list here? Because it has very little power. It has a certain duties. Our Constitution gives it a certain duties to do. And we pledge that flag, and it does that for us. We pledge that it represents our country and other nations. We pledge that it fights for our
The borders, protects the borders.
protects our borders. We're thankful for the protection. We pledge it because of those men that have died. We pledge it. There's been much blood shed for our freedoms and liberty, and we pledge it because it's supposed to protect our Constitution. But I've just told you about the proper form of government. Where do we, the people, stand?
At the
On
top.
top. Not the federal government. This is what the government wants to do. When we go to this court down here, where does it put the government? Right up here with unlimited power. You don't understand what it's like unless you spend 700 days in one of their prisons. You'll find out you stand up against the wall with your face towards that wall and you answer every question you want, or they'll shove your face right into that wall. That's how they treat people. That's how they treat we the people. That's not the way we the people of America are going to be treated anymore.
Amen.
I wish I had a nice roast beef for you and a good big slice of good watermelon.
Let me mention something, then, namely April 12th, 2018, 4 years anniversary, and it should be a gigantic celebration.
Yeah.
Cliven? Victory celebration.
I found it ironic. I was thinking about this last night. 1/8/17 of the Constitution is what we were fighting for. 1/8/18 is the day you were released. 1/8/17 and 1/8/18. 2 days are going to be easy to remember. The Constitution and the day Cliven.
Now I want to say a couple more things. You know, I have to give credit to where credit belongs, and I have to give that credit to my Heavenly Father. My Heavenly Father has blessed me, my family, and my country many, many times. And over the last 3 or 4 years, it's been continuous blessings. I want to tell you that I spent 700 days in prison. There was never a day that I didn't feel some spiritual enjoyment or relax or comfort. Never one day did I ever spend that I didn't feel His presence. And I want to tell you, the next thing I want to recognize is you people in America, even around the world, have been very good. They have supported freedom and liberty. They have supported my family. They have promoted and supported this movement. And the only way I can thank you is just tell you thank you. And I do tell you thank you. I appreciate you. Now we were scheduled to have a press conference at 1 o'clock, and you know, Brady felt like because of the weather, and maybe we need a little more time to really come forward with something before the press to know exactly where we are. He felt like we ought to postpone it for 24 hours. So tomorrow at 1 o'clock, in front of the sheriff's office, if everything goes right, that's where we'll meet again. Why in front of the sheriff's office?
We want to help get him out from under the table.
Because perjury is a crime.
Put it straight to the fire.
Should we bring our flashlights?
He doesn't like answering questions.
In 2014, who was we petitioning? Sheriff. We petitioned the Clark County Sheriff to do his job. Tomorrow, we're going to be petitioning the county sheriff. Where were you? And why have you been involved in a fusion with the federal government and the state government and the city of Mesquite and the brand inspector and on and on? Why are you fusing with these people to try to destroy Bundy and his ranch? Why are you doing that, Sheriff? And why, Sheriff, are you going before a federal court and lying before we the people's jury? County Sheriff, why are you lying before we the people in a federal court? That question somebody needs to ask tomorrow.
Very much.
Yep.
Anyway, I appreciate your love.
What time is that gonna be, Cliven,
It's
tomorrow,
gonna be
where?
1 o'clock tomorrow in front of the sheriff's office.
Sheriff of Las Vegas,
Yeah,
Nevada,
Clark County.
Clark County.
Sheriff Lombardo's office.
What's the address?
400 South Martin Luther King
Boulevard.
Boulevard.
Same where the police department is then.
There
Yeah.
will be some
The big
tents
metro
up, so if
building.
it rains, which is supposed to rain, but we'll be better prepared.
Right.
Gonna rain again?
So,
Yep.
now don't stop,
Don't do that, you want ranchers, what? We need grass.
Okay, now, are there any question that needs to be asked?
Yeah. You gonna run for office?
I don't think he's
Well,
got.
you know, I don't know what office you'd want me to run for.
Governor.
Sheriff.
Sheriff.
Let me tell
I'll
you
move to
something.
Nevada if you run
Let me
for
tell
sheriff.
you something. I don't know who's anything about politics, I guess, but I do know one thing. In the state of Nevada, we need a better government. I know another thing. In Clark County, Nevada, we need a better kind of government. And I don't know what to do with the federal government. Old Trump knows what he's doing, I guess, all I can say that.
Well, the man about to run for governor, we couldn't even get to respond to the Wooten email, so.
And you know, and that's a sad thing. You know, I mentioned it yesterday at the press conference. Where is our county commissioner? The county commissioner, I don't know, what are they, 7 of them? Where is our sheriff?
Where's the media?
We didn't even have one county metro around there. Usually they got 40 of them trying to put me in jail, make sure I don't break out. Where were they yesterday?
Hiding.
You know, where was the governor? Where was his representative? Where was he? Where was he yesterday?
Let's make an open invitation for the county commissioners to be there tomorrow and the county sheriff also.
Absolutely.
Anyway, I don't know where you're
You guys might be
now,
running
let me
scared.
tell you, you guys voted them in, I didn't. I guess I made a mark on this, but you people voted these people in. That's all I can say. And we need better. We need, Nevada deserves better. Western lands are in trouble. And you know, they're not really in trouble because of the politicians. Why is the Western land in trouble? I want you to answer that question. Why is the Western lands in trouble?
Because of the minerals and resources under the ranches and the farms. And because of Monsanto and corporations like Clinton Foundation.
Because the people keep signing their shackles.
The farmers and the ranchers themselves.
That's right. What,
Education.
Ask that question. Answer that question again for me. Who signs?
Because the people keep signing their own shackles.
The rancher keeps signing the grazing permits. Why are you signing grazing permits? Don't you own those rights? Let me just, I don't want to carry on this very far, but the present grazing fee for one AUM is, let me just explain. One AUM is one animal unit. That's one cow per, for 1 month feed. That's supposedly what an AUM is. And the federal government has fee for an AUM on the public land supposedly is $1.67 or 69. $1. Is that right on that?
I'm not 100% sure. They're $1.60, $1.70.
Yeah, I think it's $1.67 or 69. So that's all they're asking to feed one cow for a whole month. Now on private property, that price would be, say, $20 for that AUM. So on the supposedly this public land, you can buy it for $1.67. On private land, you can buy it for $20. And if you bought baled hay for $200 a ton, which is pretty fair price for a ton of, say, alfalfa hay, it would cost you $90 to feed that cow. So let's think about this. $1.67, $20, or $90 to feed one cow for 1 month? Man, is the government crazy? I mean, why would they sell their feed if they own the feed, and if they own the land, and if they own the water that the cows go to drink? We only talked about the feed, but we haven't talked about any kind of management or any expenses.
So how much cattle can graze on this land? Like how much cattle is in one herd?
Well, let me finish this out here a minute, and I'll tell you that. So now we've got, why is the government only charging us this $1.67?
It's symbolic that shows they have the authority.
It's theft upon the ranchers through taxation.
Okay, they call it tax, they could call it tax, you could say if they want to show their authority.
They get you to sign that permit.
But let me tell you, what's wrong, the ranchers not realizing they have rights. Now, I'm gonna, what rights does the rancher have out on your public land? What rights does the rancher have out on your public land? They have the forage, feed, they have water, they have access rights, they have range improvement like the trails and the fences and the water troughs. And then number 5, they have all the rights that you guys have, okay? To be able to go out there and fish and camp and scenic, ride your bicycle, whatever you want to do. The rancher still has that right, but you people all have that right. Now, who owns the property?
The people.
Okay, we the people of who? Okay, this is sort of important. We the people in New York think they own this this public land. And we the people up in Elko County thinks we own this public land. But how in the heck can that happen? How can the nation own this? Or even the international government wants a piece of this land. But who really owns this land under our Constitution?
People of the state of Nevada.
Yeah, but it even, okay, now we say we the people of Nevada should own this land. Well, I can sort of agree with that. But look, we have a Clark County border around here. I want to ask you, what power does our Clark County Sheriff have when he walks over the Lincoln County line?
Zero.
What power does our county commission have when they walk over the Lincoln County line?
Zero.
Why would we have a line there? We, the people in Clark County, elected these people. We, the people in Clark County, pay these people for their service, and their service is to protect our life, liberty, and property. So why wouldn't we claim the land?
Exactly.
I mean, this is Clark County, Nevada's land. Bundy might own rights on there, but he don't own land. What rights does Bundy own over on Bundy Ranch? He owns the forage. You guys don't own no forage rights on that land. I own them. And how come I own them? I've either bought them or inherited them. And them rights were all created through beneficial use. In other words, back to when the pioneers first came in here, the first ones that used that water, when he unbuckled horse's team off his wagon, he was thirsty. And he took the horse up to the creek or the spring or whatever and gave the horse a drink of water. When that horse very first sipped, very first drop of water he drank out of that spring, guess what he was doing? Creating beneficial use of a renewable resource. And Nevada law says what? Whoever has the first beneficial use, that's how his water rights established. So the water rights I have on Bundy Ranch were all created by somebody by first beneficial use. Preemptive rights created through beneficial use, backed up by Nevada law. Where did the federal government get any preemptive rights? Are they allowed to own cows?
Nope.
No.
So go back to the answer to the question as to why they only charge $1.60.
Yeah, I'll do that. Why do they only charge $1.67 for an AUF?
They try to keep the prices down.
It's the hook.
It's a hook, and they try to keep the prices down because then they benefit on the other end.
the reason is because, well, I don't want to get this complicated, but one time back in 1934, in Western America, there were lots of ranchers. There were lots of ranchers that had created beneficial use. And so you take that map there, and they were ranchers all over the state of Nevada that had cattle, and they had sheep. And one rancher said, this is my ranch here, and I got the right here, I got the water, I do all this. And here comes 5,000 sheep across this ranch. And the neighbor's cows come in on his ranch, and the other cows come in on the ranch, and so they're having a range war. Who's the range wars between? Between the ranchers, the sheep herders and the cowman. Well, that wasn't a Nevada problem. That was also happening in Utah and Wyoming and New Mexico and California and on and on. It was an interstate problem. And so the government really had a constitutional right to be involved here just a little bit. And so what they did is basically the ranchers hired the federal government to adjudicate their rights. And right now, if you go to the BLM's office, you could come up with a map and it would show all of these adjudicated rights. And Bundy would have an adjudicated right on that map.
Who knows what adjudication means?
You have jurisdiction over it.
Jurisdiction, and you prove something. You prove one thing, you have water rights, and there was two ways that you proved up on your grazing rights. One is you had to have water. Remember I talked about water? The other thing is you needed some private land. Like I own 160 acres of private land. It was done two ways. You either had to have water rights in the state of Nevada, or you had to have some private property. That way you hooked your grazing rights to that either water or land.
Let me explain adjudication a little bit. Adjudication is the process to settle a dispute if two or more are claiming rights upon the same land or the same water. So adjudication is a process to decide, okay, rancher A owns this or this percentage, and rancher B owns that, and so adjudication is simply the dividing up, the deciding as to who owns what. So that ends, when it's adjudicated then, it ends the conflicts that these range wars were created. And what my father was just explaining is those adjudications were based upon base property and or water rights that were established, and certain different aspects were the basis for that adjudication.
Ryan Bundy.
Okay, now let me talk just a little bit more here. How was this? Who did this adjudication? Did the federal government do the adjudication? Did the state do the adjudication? Did the county do the adjudication? No, none of those people did adjudication. They were grazing boards formed. A nominated ranchers was put on a committee, and they judged where the lines were and how many cattle were supposed to go on those in that area. The rancher themselves and their committee did that. And what did they pay the government for? They paid the government for three different things. They paid the government to monitor these sort of like juries, the committees, the grazing boards we call them, and they also paid surveyors to survey them.
To map it out.
And the third thing was that BLM was supposed to map it and keep record. And so the government, that was four things, but basically the government was supposed to keep records, survey it, and monitor. And they signed contracts with the federal government for that purpose. That was done a lot of years ago, probably by the early 60s, 1960s, this was all done. But what did the rancher do? Kept us signing the bottom of these contracts, calling it permits, calling it license, calling it privilege, calling it we're paying for grass, we're renting land. All of those things are wrong. The government, federal, BLM, Bureau of Land Management, is only being paid 12.5% of that $1.67, 7 or 12.5%, which amounts to 22.31, I think, cents, is all the federal government's paid for AUM.
Okay, so let me make that clear. the 22.3 cents per cow per month is not buying the feed.
That's right.
Okay? It was simply for the management, or those 3 or 4 things. To monitor the grazing boards, to keep the records, to survey, and to map. Okay? Those 4 things were the only things that the BLM were being paid for. The BLM does not own the land, they do not own the feed. These supposed grazing fees do not pay for feed. They pay for those services only. Now those services were completed clear back in the 60s, is that correct? Yeah. And so at this point there's no longer a need for those fees. The problem is that now they've construed it into something that it's not, and now they're claiming ownership, they're claiming all these things that are not right.
You guys just got a really great civic lesson. And remember what you just learned? Don't sign a contract. You've got to go back to with an attorneys.
Do you think this had anything to do with uranium, Cliven?
You know, those things are questionable. Definitely, like with the Harry Reid thing and Clark County thing, they wanted Bundy Ranch for mitigation for the tortoise and other endangered species. And really what that means is we want to put a bunch of solar panels down here, say by Searchlight, and we need a place to say we're taking care of the turtles, so they're going to use Bundy Ranch for that. Now, whether they wanted to put a solar system on Bundy Ranch, that's questionable.
Thank you.
Mine kept cutting out.